everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we'll be predicting and deep diving into the NFC East. We'll be talking about each team's offseason starting lineups, and we'll each predict each team's record, the winner of the division, as well as give out division awards at the end of the episode. This series is flying by. Only three teams left after this episode. We just got the AFC and NFC West, so it's been really fun. Definitely check out your team's division if you haven't yet. And excited to talk about the NFC East. It's going to be a competitive arms race of a division at the top of the division, especially. How are you, Josh?
Doing good, first day of school vibes. So I was on my way to the gym this morning. Kids are already back in school. I have no idea where the summer went. I'm so confused. But that means football is here. High school football is back. College football is about to start. Me and you are, I believe it is 8 days till our main league fantasy draft. So we're coming on to the best time of the year. Couldn't be more excited, but it's weird. I don't know where the summer went, man. I don't know how time flies when you get old. It's true. What they say is true. Time flies, and it's just you don't realize it till you start getting older. And we're not even that old, and it's already going by so fast. But I'm side tangent, doing good. Excited to talk about the NFC East. Please check out your division if you have not watched our other ones. We are nearing the end, but full steam ahead, Dan.
Yeah, crazy fantasy football seasons among us. We'll definitely make sure to try to sneak in some fantasy football episodes before the season starts. And yeah, our draft is in 9 days. I've been counting down the days, getting ready for the draft, editing my rankings. It's been really, really fun. But let's just get right into it. Let's go on to our first team of the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. They finished 4-13 last year. Little bit of a rough year. We don't really need to talk about it. We'll just go into the offseason because you upgraded at quarterback and coach, two really important positions. So they definitely did get better this offseason. They're actually quietly one of the more active teams as well. So we'll get into their additions and subtractions. They brought in Dan Quinn, obviously, an upgrade at coach, a very great defensive mind. Obviously, would have been nice bringing in like a Ben Johnson offensive type of mind, would have been a dream. But you also bring in Jaden Daniels to be the quarterback. Anything in the world as an upgrade to Sam Howell. We'll talk about Jaden Daniels a little bit more in the roster portion. They bring in Austin Eckler to be the third down back. That's kind of all I think he will be at this stage and this scheme, especially with Jaden Daniels, who doesn't really check it down to running backs too much. It's an interesting fit. We'll talk about Eckler's fit a little bit later here as well. They bring in Bobby Wagner, a veteran coming off a pretty solid season last year. They also bring in Frankie Luvu and Jeremy Chin from Carolina. And then they bring in a few players from Dan Quinn's Cowboys, Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong, and Dante Fowler. So pretty busy off season. I would say there's only one notable loss here, and that is Kendall Fuller, who's a really solid corner, goes to the Dolphins. But other than that, they definitely did get better this offseason.
Yeah, no, I really like their offseason. Obviously, in the offseason, me and you would have done some things a little bit different when it came to coach and when it actually came to the or their first overall pick. Would have loved to have seen Ben Johnson, would have loved to have seen Drake May on this team. But however, they do upgrade, they do get better. They are very active this offseason. I am a little sad to see Curtis Samuel go, but they did, bring in a Luke McCaffrey. They did bring in some cavalry in the draft. So, this should be a new and improved team, behind a Jaden Daniels, which it should be pretty fun. It should be pretty electric. He is a mobile quarterback. He's going to bring some excitement to this team. He was a Heisman winner last year. So it's going to be fun, behind this new coaching staff, behind this new quarterback, there's a lot of excitement for the Commanders.
Absolutely. And speaking of excitement, let's just go on to the roster, talk about this offense because there's a lot of exciting young pieces, and I do want to get into this Jaden Daniels discussion. I'll be honest, I'll just kind of go into my draft evaluation on him. I didn't have him as a top two quarterback in the draft. I thought Caleb and Drake May were in their own tier, and I had him kind of in a tier with Michael Penix, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. I kind of had similar grades on all four of those quarterbacks. So I don't think he was some, knock out of the park, great home run of a second overall pick, but he will be a pretty massive upgrade to Sam Howell, who was just terrible last year. He really is just not a good quarterback. And Jaden Daniels will be able to run this offense smoothly. He really can just be accurate and on time. And he really took a hold of that Kelly offense over at LSU. And he had a fantastic final season to win the Heisman. So he throws a pretty deep ball as well. I don't mind Daniels at all. I think he'll be very awesome. It is just, I think Drake May could be a top five, top 10 type of quarterback because he gives like Jordan Love and Justin Herbert vibes. But, Jane Daniels will get the job done. He does throw some really pretty balls and he'll be accurate and on time. It's just, sometimes he has some blunders. Sometimes he likes to run into brick walls for fun and he needs to be a little bit safer running the ball. But talking about the running back next to him, I do think it'll be Brian Robinson for the first few downs, and then Austin Eckler will be the third down receiving back. But the thing is Jaden Daniels doesn't really dump it off to running backs. He just looks to run it himself if the play breaks down, or he'll just throw it up to Terry because he can have that accurate deep ball accuracy. So it is a very interesting fit. Like for fantasy, I'm actually targeting Brian Robinson. I'm pretty high on him, and Eckler, I'm fading into the oblivion. I'm personally not taking him at all. I would take Terry McLaurin if he falls a little bit. I'm not like going out of my way to take Terry, but if Daniels hits, then Terry could be honestly awesome. He can throw him some nice deep balls and he can get some good upside. What are your thoughts on the fantasy outlooks for those three, especially? And I think Daniels is a cheat code in fantasy, like just because of the running.
Yeah, I think Jaden Daniels is definitely worth, that later round selection. I don't know if I do believe I think his ADP is around the 10th round, if I'm not mistaken, right now.
Yeah, it's like
But
quarterback 16, which is crazy.
yeah, crazy for a rookie, but I do think he has that upside. That running ability should be crazy. I wouldn't even be surprised if we had like an RG3 type rookie season where he just explodes. But I mean, he was ultra productive and he was able to throw touchdowns at LSU, in that high powered offense. But he had some incredible receivers and, Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors. But if he does hit, yeah, I mean, I'm not too scared about Terry McLaurin. I think his ADP is totally fair for where he's drafted at. Obviously Curtis Samuel goes, which Curtis Samuel did take a fair amount of targets. They bring in Luke McCaffrey in the draft and Ben Sinnott, which I'm not too worried about. But yeah, if there is one player I am hyper targeting, it would be Terry McLaurin. I mean, he's done worse, or he's done a lot better with worse quarterbacks. So I really don't think you'll see much of a dip in production from him. You might see a little bit of uptick. And then other than that, I'm a little scared off of Jahan Dotson. I feel like, he could either be really good or he could just fade. And then, yeah, like you said, I am targeting Brian Robinson. I think he should be fairly good. Obviously, Jaden Daniels running upside is a little bit scary. I'm not taking Eckler. I've completely crossed him off my board, but Brian Robinson, is worth a dart throw at his ADP too.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. I think Ben Sinnott could be good. I would start him day one. I don't really want to see Zach Ertz ball anymore at this point in 2024. I think De'Ami Brown's a fun, deep threat. The receiving core is just kind of underwhelming. The offense in general is kind of meh, but Jane Daniels does provide an upside and could, really hit. And he is a cheat code in fantasy just because of the running. He's going to be like a Justin Fields. Even if he isn't a great quarterback, he will be very good in fantasy. So target him, especially if it's your QB2. That's limitless upside on your bench. So I love that. The offensive line, the tackles scare the hell out of me. Brandon Coleman as a third round pick out of TCU is a kind of mind boggling pick to me. I wasn't really high on him at all. Wiley's coming off a pretty bad year. So the tackles could be something to monitor, could be a problem. Hopefully they hit the upside. Biadash is a good signing. Allegretti and Cosme coming off a fantastic season, the fourth highest graded guard in the league. So Cosme is kind of just a rock that you absolutely love to have him locked for the future. But yeah, offense is overall just, meh, nothing crazy. It'll be fun to watch Jaden Daniels though. With that, let's go on to the defense, talk about this defense. I think the defense could be pretty solid actually with Dan Quinn coming over. The defensive line's pretty immaculate, honestly. You've got Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, obviously the Bama boys, just really fun. You bring in Johnny Newton in round 2, which is one of those steals of the draft. Honestly, I know there's an injury concern with him, but he should have been a first round pick. He was absolutely awesome. The second best defensive interior player in this class by far. So the fact you have him as a third guy is pretty immaculate, pretty awesome. I absolutely love that. You got Clellan Ferrell, Dorrance Armstrong, who actually Armstrong had a pretty good season for the Cowboys last year. So I think he'll be a decent edge rusher here for Quinn. But the fact that those are your like two starting edges, Armstrong is your number one, Ferrell is your number two, it's just a little bit underwhelming to say the least. The linebackers are very solid. You got obviously Frankie Luvu coming over from Carolina. 10th graded linebacker last year. Bobby Wagner, the 7th graded linebacker last year. That's exciting. That's super fun. Jamin Davis might be moving to edge, I guess. So that's something to monitor. He could have a Micah Parsons role. Obviously, Dan Quinn coaching him up, that could be kind of fun and something to monitor. I did like his athleticism. And then the secondary, pretty bad. The outside corners, Emmanuel Forbes was a complete mess. So you have Mikey Davis starting on the outside because Forbes just cannot start. And that Stores knows better than anyone. He was coming off a very rough season with that 56 PFF grade. Benjamin
If
Season.
history repeats itself, he might be good this year. It was pretty much an every other year type of thing, but I do think Michael Davis is kind of I think his time is come and gone. I don't think he's an elite corner in the NFL anymore. I talked my ass off about him last year, telling everyone he was going to be a top 10 corner in the NFL. He's top 10 worst corner is what he was. He was darn right a liability out there. I mean, teams pick on him. He turned Jordan Love into a $275 million quarterback, gave him the confidence he needed. So that is a liability out there, but under Dan Campbell, who knows? And one guy I just want to shout out real quick because I've been dying to talk about him, who I love that the Commanders drafted from Michigan, is Mikey Still. Just me and Dan said this all off season. This is a Kenny Moore clone. I think the value got him at pick 60 in the second round is just phenomenal. I really like the Commanders' second round with getting a Jerzon Newton, Mikey Still, and a Ben Sinnott. I thought they really just knocked it out of the park in the second round with their 3 picks. But he's going to be super, super fun. Just a guy that gets his hands on the ball, ultra aggressive, that kind of smaller nickel slot corner body type, but just a guy who's gonna, it's gonna translate to the NFL year one.
Yeah, he's going to be a star slot corner in the NFL year one. He just has that aura about him where he will be a star. He's a playmaker on the ball, former receiver. He'll come down with the picks. He's got a great personality. He's a leader. He's going to be a star in the NFL. So great pick. He'll really boost this secondary. He'll be the best corner in the room day one, which is impressive. He'll be an awesome player. We both loved him. I think it's pretty clear he was the slot cornerback one in the class. Safety, Jeremy Chin, Quan Martin. I think that's a pretty respectable safety duo. That should be actually fun, a young safety duo to talk about. Pretty fun team. It's a young team, though, so you can't expect too much. With that being said, do you want to give your record prediction?
Yeah. So I have the Commanders at a respectable 6-11 under rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels and new head coach Dan Quinn this year. I think it's fair. I think there's going to be growing pains, but this is a team that you're looking to the future. It's young, it's exciting. You have a lot of future picks. You're going to have a lot of future money. You have a quarterback on a rookie deal. You have some key pieces on defense. You have a star wide receiver in Terry McLaurin. I'll say it, till the day I die. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL, and he's just had pretty, horrible situation his entire career and made the most of it. But I think, yeah, 6-11, finishing third in the division.
Yeah, definitely respectable. I'm one game less than you. I'm finishing 5-12 and finishing fourth in the division. The Vegas win total over under is 6.5 wins. So we're both right on the under for the win total for this team. But rookie quarterback, new coach, it will have some growing pains. It is a young team, but there is some fun pieces to be excited about for this team. So yeah, very fun discussion talking about the Washington Commanders. But with that, let's go to the New York Giants. Speaking of fun, it'll be a fun discussion here. They finished 6-11 last year. Say they kind of stayed about the same. We'll go to the offseason because they didn't really do too much, but they do bring in a superstar. And I will say Brian Burns is a superstar. Even just watching him in the preseason, he makes some really, really, really fun plays. So we'll just get into their offseason additions, subtractions. Brian Burns obviously has to be the first person we talk about. Had a nasty spin move in their last preseason game, and he really does just have like that Von Miller type of pass rush moves to him where he's just so athletic. He can just get off the line so quick. And I think the sky really is a limit. I think he'll really hit his upside this year in his first year with the Giants. Now that he's in, a different situation outside of Carolina, I think he'll really just kind of skyrocket. He's just an absolute freak. They bring in Malik Neighbors, obviously, with a 6th overall pick. He'll be a very, very fun addition. I compared him to Odell Beckham Jr. before the draft even. So what a perfect landing spot. He comes to New York. He's the perfect personality for New York. He'll be a star. Get him in fantasy football. Even if Daniel Jones is thrown to him, he's going to be a PPR machine. They're going to kind of center the offense around Malik Neighbors. So that's a very, very fun pick. Devin Singletary comes in to replace Saquon. About all I can say on Devin Singletary. He's Singletary. They're bringing John Runyon and Jermaine Illuminor to start on the offensive line. And the most notable thing is they don't really bring in a quarterback, just Drew Lock. And I do think they should have brought in a quarterback. If not the free agency, they should have drafted a quarterback. I was kind of on that side where I predicted JJ McCarthy to go to the Giants in my mock draft. And I do think just Daniel Jones isn't it. I mean, we saw it in that Texans preseason game, not to bring up the preseason, but that's pretty pathetic. And Daniel Jones just isn't that guy. And then they do lose Saquon, X McKinney, and Leonard Williams. So some pretty like star losses.
Yeah. Xavier McKinney, I'll just start on that because that's where we left off on. Pretty brutal loss. Obviously, he departs to the Packers over there. They get better at that position. Saquon leaving, that's kind of been your star guy for, that's your favorite player on the Giants. That's who everyone loves. So sad to see him go. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to look at the Giants and take them seriously with Daniel Jones. It just seems like that ride is come and gone, and it just seems like from those few plays that were just so terrible in the preseason that it's just like I think this is just a sinking ship, and it's gonna cause some people to get fired. Let's just say that people who have given out contracts, people who are coaching him, it's a sinking ship with Daniel Jones. Like you said, I hate to talk about preseason, but you see Patrick Mahomes in preseason throwing a behind the back pass, just scoring on every drive. It's just there's there's a difference between certain players. You see Bo Nix as a rookie going out there and scoring on every single drive, just pretty much flawless. And then you see Daniel Jones throwing 2 picks and 3 passes. So it's just sorry, Giants fans, but I don't think that's your future.
Yeah, but perfect transition into the lineup. So we'll go right into the lineup here and talk about this offense. And it really is Malik Neighbors versus the world. That's kind of what this offense is centered around is Malik Neighbors, rookie 6 overall pick. It's literally the offense. So it'll be a very interesting watch this year for the Giants. They improve on the offensive line. I love Andrew Thomas coming off of a pretty fantastic season. He's a complete star. Illuminor will be, just a steady right tackle. Van Roten's coming off a great year. John Michael Smith, we both loved coming out of Minnesota. So hopefully he can kind of bounce back from a little bit of a rough rookie season. But yeah, man, it's as long as Daniel Jones is out there, like you said it perfectly. It's just hard to respect this team. It really is. Just how are you going to be scared of this team? I think the Giants will be one of the bottom teams and one of the easier outs just because of Daniel Jones, and defenses will just be feasting, and it'll make it so hard on the Giants defense and the Giants team to come back. And it is just Neighbors, the rookie versus the world. But I mean, in fantasy, target Neighbors because he will be the offense here and they're going to target the hell out of him. So I do love Neighbors.
Neighbors could be rookie of the year, sneak peek. He really could be. I think he's going to get that much type of volume because I mean, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for this offense to succeed because I mean, I don't think they have a good run game. I don't think, their offensive line is suited to carry this. I think defenses are going to stack the box. They don't have a superstar running back in Saquon Barkley anymore who struggled behind this line. Obviously, you do add a couple pieces, but it's just not going to be good enough. Teams aren't going to respect the run. They're going to stack the box. They're going to blitz Daniel Jones. They're going to double Malik Neighbors, and so it's just it scares me. It just scares me. It just doesn't feel like they did enough this offseason. I'm kind of hitting the panic button on the Giants a little bit. Obviously, I do really like their draft. I like Malik Neighbors. I like Tyler Nubin. I didn't love Theo Johnson at the value. Tyrone Tracy Jr. I really do like. He's not Saquon Barkley, I'll tell you that. He's not he's not what Saquon Barkley is or ever will be, but he is kind of a fun player who I do like.
Yeah,
Um,
talk about your favorite late round dart throw in Tracy. How do why are you
for
targeting?
for a fantasy aspect, I really do like Tyrone Tracy because he is kind of that all around scat back. He's a capable receiver. He's a, in my opinion, a great runner. He's just kind of that guy that kind of did everything, and he's got fantastic hands. So in this type of offense where Daniel Jones, is going to be scared and he's going to be looking for that check down a lot. Tyrone Tracy is their best running back, he's their best pass catching back, excuse me. And so, they did draft him, And so I think he's going to have a shot to get some actual good snaps, and I think he could be worth that late round dart though. 'Cause, I mean, Devin Singletary is nothing to write home about, and I'm blanking his name, but who absolutely went off in preseason though. He's
Yeah, Eric Gray is coming off a really
yeah.
good preseason game. So, between Singletary, Tracy, and Gray, they'll get the job done. But yeah, Tracy's that former receiver type, so he will be the electric one, the fun one to target in fantasy. And he is, great value for the upside.
Yeah, and I do think Malik Neighbors is him, so I think he's going to come down with a lot of awesome passes. It just kind of feels like that rookie Odell with Malik Neighbors. He's kind of got that throw me the ball right now mentality, or I'm going to throw a fit, and so he's going to get his.
Yeah, they got themselves a star receiver in this division. It's needed with CD and AJ Brown in this division. Scary Terry as well. But yeah, ultimately the Giants are what they are as long as they have Daniel Jones under center. Dable will elevate them again like he did last year. They won way more games than they should have last year, and that's pretty much just because Dable is such a great coach and he really elevated. Going on to the defense, obviously you have to talk about Brian Burns first. He's just absolutely awesome. He's a up and coming transcending star edge rusher. I think this is the year that he really breaks out and hits his ceiling. And like I said, he's that Von Miller mold where he's just such a freak athlete. He's got those nasty spin moves. He's just such a fun highlight reel edge rusher. So I love that you have him. That will really help Kayvon Thibodeau opposite of him, who needs to step it up as that top 10 pick. He definitely needs to hit that upside, and hopefully Brian and Burns can let him. And then in the interior, you got Sexy Dexy, Dexter Lawrence, the number one graded interior defensive lineman. And there's some damn good interior defensive linemen in the NFL. So very impressive season for Lawrence. You absolutely love that you have him. It's a pretty underrated defensive line, honestly. And this defense does have some stars in place, with Brian Burns, Lawrence. I do, like I really love Banks going into the secondary. I was really high on Banks coming out of Maryland. Hopefully he can kind of have a little breakout season here on the outside. Sounds like he's having a good camp. The rest of the secondary, though, a little bit scary to me. Andrew Phillips might be starting, and I was actually low on him in the draft. Didn't really love him coming out of Kentucky. You got, Cordell Flott, who's coming off a decent season. Jason Pinnock, Dane Belton. It's just, kind of a meh secondary. It might be, part of their downfall. Bobby Okereke is a very awesome linebacker coming off a very solid season. He's a great leader for this team. Isaiah Simmons is a great athlete, but ultimately it's kind of the defensive line versus the world right here.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, Brian Burns, Sexy Dexy, and Kayvon Thibodeau in the middle. I mean, they've got good depth pieces. With Aziz Ojulari. But I Boogie Basham. I actually really really love and respect this defensive line. It's gonna be what needs to absolutely carry this defense. It's got to come from that defensive and defensive interior pressure, putting stress on the quarterback, because the rest of the team outside, of Deontay Banks, I am a little panicked on. I think the secondary can absolutely get exposed. Losing Xavier McKinney back there is a huge blow. Somebody I just noticed that they did sign, Raheem Lane, absolute special teams demon coming over from the Chargers. Sad to say, I forgot who he got signed by, but absolutely sad to see him on this team. But Tyler Newbin, I think can be somebody who will start at some point this season. But as of right now, it's just not quite there for me. It's gonna rely a lot on the defensive interior, and maybe they can be enough, but it does panic me a little bit.
Yeah, a few stars on that defensive line. I was really high on Tyler Newbin as well. Got to mention him. He was my safety one. I absolutely loved him coming out of Minnesota. He's not the greatest athlete, but he's a very smart and just good overall player. Can, tackle and cover. So I love Tyler Newbin. Hopefully he starts ASAP. But with that, you want to give your record prediction for this team?
Yes, and Giants fans, forgive me, but it's 100% on your quarterback, Mr. Daniel Jones. But I just see this the year of firings, and I feel like this is the year where it implodes. And your general manager loses his job. But yeah, for giving Daniel Jones that contract. But it is 3-14 where I have the Giants. I feel like this is just kind of where it's going to implode. I don't think the roster's very good. Your offense is pretty terrible. There's really no one who's a superstar outside of Andrew Thomas and Malik Neighbors. So they're just not quite there yet. You got a competitive division. You obviously have to pay the Eagles and Cowboys twice a year, and those are automatic losses for me. So it's gonna be a brutal division. It's gonna be tough, and as we saw Daniel Jones sneak peek this preseason, it looks ugly already.
Yeah, that's exactly why I predicted them and wanted them to draft a JJ McCarthy with the sixth overall pick, is because you're predicting them to have the first overall pick. I'm pretty sure that's the lowest record we've seen this whole series that you predicted. And it's a terrible quarterback class. You can't even take a quarterback there. So you'd have to like trade down if you wanted Shadur or something. I don't, it is kind of a mess situation. That's why I would have taken a quarterback last year. I have a 6-11 record, finishing third in the division. I just respect the hell out of Brian Dable. I think he is just such a great coach, and he will kind of manufacture some wins exactly how he did last year. Love Neighbors. I love their, kind of young core. But at the same time, it's not going to be the most exciting season. We both have them as their under. They have the same over under win total in Vegas as the Commanders at 6.5 wins. So we're both on the under, both a little bit lower on the Giants. But yeah, ultimately it is Daniel Jones. It comes down to Daniel Jones, and that's really all it is. So with that, let's go on to the Eagles. A very more positive discussion, because this team is stacked. This team is locked and loaded, really roster wise. It's up there with the best of the rosters in the NFL. So excited to talk about the Eagles, who go at 11-6 last year. They were a first round exit. I'll kind of brush over that, and then we'll go on to the offseason, because I'm pretty confident they're going to be a lot better this offseason and this season, because of the offseason, and this team will be, locked and loaded and making a push at the NFC. First of all, they bring in some heavy hitters. They bring in Saquon Barkley from the division rival Giants. Very big signing. It's kind of fun to envision him behind the great Eagles run blocking offensive line in the same backfield with Hurts. Saquon should be eating. They also bring in Bryce Huff to replace Hassan Reddick. Bryce Huff is a very, very underrated edge rusher from the Jets, so I love that. CJ Gardner-Johnson, don't love that as much. He's a pretty bad player at this point in his career. He was a liability for the Lions last year. Teams really picked him apart in the end of the season and in the playoffs, and it really screwed over the Lions, and he cannot tackle at this point. So I do not love him, but you bring in Devin White from the Bucks, decent. You need linebacker help. And then they had self-awareness. My favorite thing they did all off seasons, they had the self-awareness of what their downfall was last year and why they lost to Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. It was their secondary. Their pass defense was the worst in the NFL, and their draft was really fun. We loved what they did, bringing in Quinion in round 1 and then Cooper DeJean in round 2. I mean, that was damn fun.
Every time we say his name, baby, it's Howie Roseman. He is the GOAT general manager. He is on a different tier level than these guys. He is in that alien tier of general managers. And like you said, it's the self-awareness. When your team is bad and getting exposed to something, you attack that area. And he did it in the first 2 rounds at an elite level, getting Quinion Mitchell, who had no business being there at 22. A lot of people thought he had top 10, top 5 potential of being drafted. I mean, just a guy who just exploded this offseason, with running a 4.33 40. I mean, just going to the Senior Bowl. I mean, he checked every single box. And then getting just a guy like Cooper DeJean, who's just that flexible, play all over your secondary, get your hands on the ball type of corner, who's just, who I said, me and you both said he's a corner one, he's a safety one. Daniel Jeremiah compared him to a souped up Eric Weddle. Dude, sign me up. I mean, this guy is an absolute stud. But yeah, I absolutely love what they did in their draft. I mean, Jalex Hunt too, Will Shipley, Anaya Smith, Jeremiah Trotter, Trevor Keegan, Johnny Wilson is just a fun dart throw in the 6th round. It's just what Howie Roseman does. He finds value. He finds talent. He addresses what needs to be addressed. And I mean, just got to always bow down to my king, my savior, Howie Roseman. Just a guy who I ultimately respect.
Yeah, I love what they did, double dipping at the corner position. We both obviously had Cooper and Quinion as our top 5 corners in the class. So they double dipped and, got 2 of our top 5 corners in the class in the first 2 rounds. Absolutely beautiful. Lions also did as well with Terrion Arnold and Rakestraw, but obviously the Eagles players were a little bit higher of caliber because DeJean is a complete stud to us. Their only notable loss to me is Hassan Reddick. Obviously, that is rough. He was a very good edge rusher, but there's a big contract situation there, so I totally actually understand that. And really secretly don't think there's too much of a drop off with him and Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff is one of the more underrated edge rushers in the league for me. So let's go talk about this offense. This
Well,
offense will be
real
really.
quick, sorry, Dan, I'm going to cut you off here. What do you think about Kellen Moore coming over to this offense? That is something, obviously, me and you are big fans of the previous offensive coordinator and Brian Johnson, and kind of thought, Nick Sirianni is kind of the problem behind everything. But they bring over Kellen Moore. Do you think this offense is going to have a step up? Do you think there's going to be those pointing fingers? What do you kind of make of the new offensive coordinator?
Yeah, so I actually do. Obviously, I really liked Brian Johnson, and I totally thought he was scapegoated. So I didn't think there was a need to, get him out of there. The offense was still a top five scoring offense. But I do like if you have to bring two guys in. I do like bringing in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, obviously for the defense. But my prediction for Kellen Moore actually is I hear that there's a job waiting for him, a head coach job waiting for him at BYU right now. But I kind of predict that this offense kind of blows up and takes off, and he's closer to getting an NFL head coach after this season. NFL head coaching job. I really just obviously you look at his offense, it's stupidly talented. You can't really mess it up. And I do project the Eagles to just really have a great season this year, really kind of get pissed off from what happened last year. They, unlike the Cowboys, added stars this offseason, really attacked their weaknesses, and they did a lot to, make a run at the Super Bowl. So I do have a take that Kellen Moore actually has a really good season here. He'll work well with Jalen Hurts, who, he was the eighth graded quarterback last year on a kind of a down season compared to the season before. Obviously, you've got Devontae Smith, AJ Brown on the outside, one of the more exciting receiver duos, if not the most exciting. You got Saquon Barkley behind this Eagles offensive line. That just is going to be a fun sight in itself. You got really great tackles. The interior offensive line isn't the most exciting with Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, and Tyler Steen, maybe Mekhi Becton, but I do think this offense will really take off, and Kellen Moore will kind of replenish his name and reputation.
Yeah, I feel like he just kind of got a bad rap last year. Kellen Moore did too. Kind of was scapegoated a little bit. I mean, Kellen Moore, there's definitely some, as a Chargers fan, there's definitely some questionable protection calls, but just the overall roster and where it was at and, what he was trying to do. I mean, the offense was working incredible when Mike Williams was healthy, Keenan Allen was healthy, the running backs were good, Rashawn Slater wasn't hurt, and then it just Herbert's finger wasn't hurt, and then it just kind of took a downfall, kind of like Brian Johnson. So they're both kind of scapegoated, but I am ultra excited to see what he can do in this offense. Obviously, you got two bookend tackles who are just going to go out there and, play, some of the best of their, positions there. I mean, Jordan Mailata's, third ranked left tackle, Lane Johnson, obviously just one of the better guys for the last decade. You've got your superstar wide receiver core with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, who are just so fun. And I can't wait to actually see Saquon Barkley run behind a competent line and a competent run game. It's just going to be so fun. And with that duo of Hurts and Barkley, it's going to be absolutely lethal. And from a fantasy aspect, man, I'm targeting everyone. I'm targeting Devontae Smith. I'm targeting AJ Brown. Obviously, I'm targeting Saquon Barkley. I think the fantasy production out of this Eagles offense is going to be crazy. I'm really, really, really high on AJ Brown. Obviously, he's gonna be a top, five wide receiver in the NFL. He's gonna have those boom weeks because he has that he's that type of receiver that just absolutely explodes. And then on the other side, Devontae Smith is just the level of consistency. He's gonna have another 1,000 yard season. He's not gonna score 13 touchdowns like AJ Brown, but he'll have his six. And so at his ADP, I think it's plenty fair. I am a little worried about Saquon Barkley's touchdown percentage with Jalen Hurts, and especially, the tush push that they do. But I think this offense is creative. I think Kellen Moore's creative. I think that he's going to be an asset through the air. So I'm hyper targeting, almost everyone on this Eagles offense.
Yeah, agreed. I really think this offense blows up. I want pieces of it in fantasy for sure. AJ Brown is just a complete superstar. I am taking him with the seventh overall pick in drafts. I'm taking Devontae Smith as much as I can in the third round because I think that's a total steal. And Jalen Hurts is obviously a fantasy cheat code as well. So yeah, I really do love this team. Dallas Goedert's not a bad dart throw at the end of drafts as well. I do want to talk about wide receiver three. Their slot receiver position is very bad. They have no depth at receiver. Our lads has Britton Covey starting as the slot receiver. This has Paris Campbell starting. They have Anaya Smith that might start. I mean, their wide receiver three is rough, but you do have the stupid top two receivers.
Got John Ross on that team too, baby. John
That's
Ross
crazy.
and Johnny Wilson, who we said we threw a dart, who Johnny Wilson's probably a little bit more of a tight end.
Yeah.
He's a 6'7" wide receiver who's not very fast. He's probably going to slot a little bit better in at tight end if he can block. I don't even know if he makes the roster, but he was kind of a unique piece in the draft, of which got him drafted. But hey, man, I mean, John Ross, I mean, Anaya Smith, I really did like him out of Texas A&M. I thought he was a fun wide receiver. But yeah, I mean, outside of your starting two, it is kind of, from a fantasy aspect, it's going to be nice because it's going to be AJ Brown and Devontae Smith just getting all the targets.
Yeah, they will just be attacking the stars in this offense. And I do want to say Mekhi Becton won't be starting. It will be either, Tyler Steen or Matt Hennessy, whoever wins that job. But let's go on to the defense because this defense coached by Vic Fangio should be really, really fun. It's just got a lot of stars. And I do just absolutely love what they did bringing in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. I want to take off Isaiah Rodgers off this graphic because I do think that they should start Quinyon on the outside and Cooper DeJean in the slot very quick. I think Cooper DeJean could be a special slot corner. He kind of has that safety feel to him, but can also just be a dog on the line of scrimmage and just be a good press corner. So I do think that he needs to start as a slot corner. Go to the defensive line. There's some really, really good pieces on this defensive line. Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham comes back. Obviously, Huff, who I absolutely loved, one of the more underrated edge rushers in Bryce Huff. And then you got a great interior in Jalen Carter, who already was a sixth graded interior defensive lineman, just a very fantastic prospect out of Georgia, superstar type of prospect. They have Jordan Davis as well. Speaking of Georgia, superstar, Milton Williams behind them. So a stacked defensive line, and that is kind of the theme of this defense in general. Is it's very stacked defense, great depth to it. The secondary, I do want to say James Bradbury fell off a cliff. He was just terrible last year, absolutely terrible. Apparently, he's moving to safety, and he won't even start over, Blankenship and C.J. Gardner Johnson. And I do really like Sidney Brown. Hopefully, he can come back from the injury because he was showing some flashes. But yeah, I do think ultimately the secondary is much improved. Obviously, you got big play Darius Slay, who's just a great corner still. So bringing in those two rookie corners, I think it helps a lot. And Isaiah Rodgers, he will be a nice dart throw, a nice piece to have here. Linebacker, you bring in Zach Bond and Devin White. Devin White's coming off an abysmal season. 47 PFF grade is crazy. Zach Bond was actually a very sneaky signing, but I do think it is upgrades because they didn't really have any linebackers, and you still have another Georgia guy in Nakobe Dean. So a very, very solid defense coached up by Fangio.
Oh yeah, I mean Fangio being on this is just, I mean, obviously the Fangio scheme is famous. He's gonna have this team playing incredible. And yeah, it all starts up front, I mean, Bryce Huff, Jalen Carter, who's an absolute superstar. Obviously, as a rookie, I expect him to take another step forward. Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, big play Slay, Quinyon Mitchell. They added the key pieces which they need for this defense to succeed. And all around this team is just very solid. They're going to be in that contention. They're going to be in that mix of being the best team in the NFC. And obviously, you know they have all the pieces to do it. They have all the superstar talent. They have smart coaches. I'm not going to say Nick Sirianni's smart, but everyone around is smart. I don't know. As Dan says, I'm not really sure what Nick Sirianni does.
What do you do here? I
I,
don't know.
yeah, he's just there. He's just kind of a guy.
He pumps them up, but he does hire great coordinators. I'll give him that.
Yeah, no, he does. And I don't know if it's Nick Sirianni hiring him or if it's my GOAT GM. But yeah, I mean Nick Sirianni is just kind of a face. He's a Philly face. He's a hard nosed, yell at you, scream at you type of guy. But I love the Eagles this year, man. I think I love what they did in this offseason. I think they're going to be very competitive.
Yeah, lastly, real quick, I'll shout out Jalix Hunt. He was someone that I was kind of just throwing a lot of, you know, dart throws at in mock drafts when I was mock drafting for teams. I think he has a lot of upside. And obviously the Eagles get him, so he's going to hit that upside and be a really good rotational edge rusher here. But with that, give me your record prediction for the Eagles.
I got the Eagles finishing 12, or a very, very respectable, highest in the division, 12-5 for the first overall in the division. I think they will have that title this year. I think they're one of the better teams in the whole NFC. And they're gonna be pushing for that NFC championship because I mean this is a superstar team. I love what they did bringing in Saquon Barkley. I love what they did addressing their biggest need in the draft with bringing in a Cooper DeJean and a Quinion Mitchell. I think they knocked it out of the park this season. Obviously, Jason Kelsey retires, your interior gets a little bit weaker, but they were just so well coached, and you have two just incredible tackles that is gonna, evolve the play of your interior. So there's just nothing that I'm too worried about on this defense or offense and defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the very same wavelength as you. I had them finishing 12-5, first in the division. Vegas has them at 10.5 over under win total, tied with the Lions. So I do, I am considering throwing a little bit of an over bet on this team because I do think that they have a very great regular season, and I do think they're well equipped for the postseason as well. So I do really just love what the Eagles have done. And I want to just get into the Cowboys because I've been very much looking forward to this conversation all day. Honestly, I just want to talk about what the Cowboys are doing. I want to talk through what the Cowboys are doing because, like we just mentioned with the Eagles, they lost in the first round as well, so just like the Cowboys did, 12-5 last year, first in the division. But first round exit, a pretty abysmal showing to the Packers, 48-32 at home. The thing is, we'll go to their offseason. Look at like this is the most silly, pathetic additions that we've seen in this whole series so far. The Eagles, they went and got some stars. They went and got some real superstars, and they kind of identified their weaknesses and attacked those spots in the draft. The Cowboys bring in do they bring in anyone? I don't like there's listed Carl Lawson and Jordan Lewis, but those aren't notable additions, and that's all we're talking about here. So I guess we could talk about first round pick Tyler Guyton. I think that's a notable addition. I do think he was a raw prospect. He will be moving to the left side and starting at left tackle. And
Oh, they brought in Ezekiel Elliott. They
oh,
brought
how could
him
I forget the reunion? The reunion that everyone wanted. RB1 Zeke. That will be fun. I mean,
Lost
what do
Tony
you
Pollard. Yeah, brought in Zeke back.
I guess we'll talk about Zeke in or you just tell me, are you drafting him in fantasy? How do you feel about him and Rico Dowdle? Are you drafting both of them or?
I'm kind of just grossed out in general. Um, I think in the year of 2024, I don't think Ezekiel Elliott is a good running back. He might get enough volume, to justify him being on your roster. I'm definitely not taking him high. I think I probably, in my opinion, I've crossed him off the draft board. Rico Dowdle is he's interesting. He intrigues me, obviously, because he's a younger guy. He's the second guy behind him. And Zeke's 30 years old and slow and looks terrible. But I don't know, because it seems like the Cowboys like to feed Zeke. It seems like literally on and off the field, they like to feed the guy. So I don't know. I'm terrified. You give me your insight because I don't know what to do with the Cowboys running back situation.
Yeah, I'm not quite taking them off my board just because this is a top five offense in the NFL, and I do want to attack top five offenses in the NFL, and Zeke will fall into the end zone. I do think that there's a world where both of them are decent, but yeah, there's just not really much upside at all with them going to their notable losses. They lose Tony Pollard, who, I mean, he wasn't really good last year, but it is a downgrade at the position. You lose Tyron Smith, who was still fantastic last year at like 34 years old. Lose Dash, two starters in the offensive line, Stephon Gilmore, Dorrance Armstrong, and Neville Gallimore. You lose Dan Quinn, obviously. So those are some, pretty notable losses. And then you don't have one notable addition. It's pretty wild stuff. The only team in this entire series to do so that we've gone over. Re-sign CD Lamb, you clown, Jerry Jones. I don't know what you are doing, not just paying CD Lamb. I didn't mean re-sign him, but just pay him, extend him, give him all the money that you have because he is this team going onto this offense. I mean, this team last year was Dak Prescott and CD Lamb versus the world, the fourth highest graded quarterback, the sixth highest graded receiver. CD Lamb was the number one fantasy receiver last year. He'll be the number one fantasy receiver again this year just because there's no one else on this offense, and the offense really is CD Lamb. He's the first read for Dak Prescott, and he'll throw it to him if he's somewhat open. So, yeah, CeeDee Lamb is that guy, a top three receiver in the NFL, 91 PFF grade last year. He's just absolutely awesome. I do want to kind of have a Dak Prescott situation or discussion, and it's such a weird situation and discussion because he's probably the best quarterback in the NFL on first and second down. And just in the regular season in general, he's just fantastic. He was a shout to win MVP last year. but it's just something in his head mentally just doesn't click on like downs, big games, obviously playoff games. He just can't get over the hump mentally. And I just think there's a cap ceiling with Dak at this point, and I do understand why they're not paying him after that abysmal loss to the Packers, where he lost to Joe Barry's Packers by himself. He lost that game. He was just abysmal, and I understand not extending him and making him play through the season on his last year of his contract because it was really rough. But that being said, he was like an MVP candidate last year in the regular season. He's just fantastic. He'll put up big numbers, target him in fantasy. I think he'll be, put up those numbers again. I think it'll be a very similar season to last year. CeeDee Lamb as well. I'm drafting him second overall in fantasy. But I mean, look at the rest of this offense, man. It's just very underwhelming. Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 2 and 3, pretty crazy stuff. Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott in the backfield. You've got Terrence Steele coming off an abysmal season at right tackle. Guyton has a lot of work to do in his technique and his pass pro set. You're starting him at left tackle. He was a right tackle in college, and he already had some work to do. Obviously, your interior is completely brilliant. Tyler Smith's an all-pro. Zach Martin's a legend. Cooper Beebe, we both really love. So we love the interior. But man, this team is very interesting. I do think Jake Ferguson is the wide receiver 2 in this offense. Target him in fantasy. I'm definitely trying to leave my drafts with him. But yeah, very interesting offense.
It is, and just a very interesting offseason in general. It's like Jerry Jones, the one thing you can't do is piss off your best player, and he goes and pisses off CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's not even practicing with the team. At the moment, he's in a holdout. He's pissed, and it's just like obviously I do expect them to play him because I just don't like. You'd be crazy. I mean, Jerry Jones is a little crazy. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they go into week one without CeeDee Lamb signed. I couldn't imagine it would last very long into the season. So I wouldn't be too scared off of him from a fantasy aspect because he is just going to be, a top 2 wide receiver, him or Tyreek Hill. I think obviously you're 1, 2. They're just electric. Obviously Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, but it'd be hard to justify taking 2 players over CeeDee Lamb from a fantasy aspect just because he is this offense. He is the volume. He scores touchdowns. He gets receptions. He can get yards. He just does everything at an elite level. And yeah, like you said, Dak Prescott, when it matters, he's nowhere. He's nowhere to be found. Obviously, during the season, he was incredible. Me and you were praising him. He was playing MVP football. Coming into those last few weeks, me and you thought he should have been the MVP of the NFL, and then it took a turn so bad for the Cowboys. And obviously, yeah, that playoff game was just brutal. His playoff record, win-loss ratio is 2-5. It's just terrible. He's not good when it matters. And so, yeah, it is hard because when it matters the most in playoffs and big moments, Dak Prescott vanishes. And this team, it's been so good. I mean, we've talked about the Cowboys being one of the elite offenses and defenses in the NFL, and this defense is so incredible. But I mean, it's hard because you have a superstar offensive line, you have a superstar wide receiver, you've had good running backs. But Dak Prescott has not been able to get it done when it matters, and it just needs to be talked about, and it's hard to justify, paying him as a top quarterback in the NFL when he doesn't get it done when it matters.
Yeah, and ultimately there's that mental block with Dak Prescott, and been that mental block with Mike McCarthy, the head coach, for a while as well, where it's just this is kind of for me, honestly, it's a pretty obvious foresight that he will get fired at the end of the season. I could see Dak, walking at the end of the season. I could just see this season ending badly because they didn't have really too much self-awareness. This offense stayed the exact same, except for you lost Tyron Smith and brought in a rookie to replace him at left tackle. So it will be slightly worse, but production-wise, it'll be the very exact same. Jake Ferguson is literally wide receiver 2 here. We'll go on to the
Very good
defense.
fantasy value for Jake Ferguson at his
Oh,
ADP right now. Give me all the Jake Ferguson you can get at his ADP because I mean this dude is gonna probably have 70, 80 receptions. I mean, it's just he is the wide receiver 2 in this offense. There is no one else. I mean, 35-year-old Brandon Cooks, who maybe not can't even stay healthy a full season and is 100 years old. But yeah, I mean, outside of CeeDee Lamb, and especially if CeeDee Lamb's not even out there week one, just give me all the Jake Ferguson you can from a fantasy aspect because he's gonna eat.
his value is literally printing money this year. Like I'm waiting on tight end just so I can draft Jake Ferguson because he's being drafted stupidly low. So yeah, definitely target him. We'll go on to the defense, kind of going on to this theme of the offense stayed the same, slightly got worse. The defense slightly got worse because you replaced Dan Quinn, very good defensive mind, for Mike Zimmer. We saw Mike Zimmer coach up Colorado last year. We saw that Colorado defense last year, and he comes back to the NFL. Obviously, he's a very respected mind, but it's not like he's going to be better than Dan Quinn. So, ultimately, they didn't bring in anyone. They lose Sam Williams, which is a very big blow. He looked like he was just having, gonna have a breakout season this year. He has so much upside, but he out for season with injury, which is heartbreaking. So this defense won't be better. That's for sure. You lose Stephon Gilmore as well. Obviously, you get Trevon Diggs back from injury, but how much can you really rely on him to be that CB1 that he used to be at this point? You have Deron Bland opposite of him coming off a fantastic season, the number 2 graded PFF corner, obviously famously had the most pick sixes in NFL history. He's just a playmaker. He will make those plays. He'll also get beat. He'll give up some yards, but he will be a very fun, dynamic playmaker for this defense. Jordan Lewis in the slot, Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson. You also have my boy Marquise Bell, who I absolutely love. So yeah, this is a very good secondary, even losing Gilmore. You also lose Jaron Curse, who Mike Zimmer just hates. He could not re-sign him because they have like a literal personal beef, which is kind of funny to me. But yeah, I do love Marquise Bell. He's kind of that same mold. Defensive line is awesome as well. Obviously, you lose Sam Williams, but you still have DeMarcus Lawrence, Tank Lawrence, the 8th graded edge rusher last year on limited snaps because Sam Williams was playing so awesome. You have Micah Parsons, the top 2 edge rusher, the Micah Parsons, coming off a great, fantastic season, 92.4 PFF grade, 2nd graded edge rusher. I loved Marshawn Nealon coming out of Western Kentucky. I thought he was an awesome prospect. I think he can play on the interior and edge. So I do, really like that draft pick. Mosley Smith's going to really need to step it up this year 100%. So hopefully he can hit that upside. Linebacker wise, Damone Clark, I did like out of LSU. He came off a pretty good season last year. You want to talk about Eric Kendricks because he's not really the same old Eric Kendricks that you're used to with the Vikings. He's coming off a pretty bad season.
No, Mike Zimmer has a little bit of a bias of a bring in. It's kind of funny because Eric Kendricks originally signed with the San Francisco 49ers. Um, to go reunite with a Brandon Staley, but Mike Zimmer gets hired by the Cowboys and he ultimately backs out of the contract and goes and signs with them, which was probably a good thing for the 49ers because Eric Kendricks at this point in time is a liability. He's not a very good run defender anymore. He's a liability in the passing game. I'm surprised he had a 72.3 PFF grade because it felt like that should have been more in the 20s. But yeah, not a very good linebacking core. I would put Marquise Bell as your starting linebacker. All 3, 2, whatever, depending if you're a 3-4, 4-3 defense. I would put Marquise Bell everywhere because that guy is incredible. He can come up and be that hybrid safety linebacker, nickel. He's just one of the more fun players in the NFL. Obviously, you get a healthy Trayvon Diggs back this year, which should help that secondary a little bit. But I mean, I think this defense, just because of the star power with your Diggs, with your Demarcus Lawrence, with your Micah Parsons, who's just one of the best, premier edge rushers in the NFL, with Deron Bland, they're going to get their hands on balls. They're good at creating turnovers. It's Mike Zimmer is questionable. I think this defense is going to be fine. I still feel like they'll somehow end up, obviously top 10 defense because I just feel like they've been coached the right way. They'll get their hands on the football. Those 2 edge rushers are going to create havoc. They're going to get after the quarterback fast. And you just got your 2 superstar corners who are good at picking off the ball. When the ball is thrown at them, they're not defending, they're not getting past defenses. They're actually catching it. So, 2 guys that could play wide receiver.
This is the perfect defense you want to target in fantasy because they're going to be scoring. You obviously Micah Parsons will be stripping the ball, and then you've got the corners that will be ball hawking and getting those picks. So this is a defense to target in fantasy for sure. You mentioned Marquise Bell. He should be playing a lot of linebacker here. I do like DeMarvion Overshown, obviously injured last year, but we liked him coming out of Texas. And then Maurice Liufau, he kind of is a Eric Kendricks clone. So I think if Kendricks is as bad as he was last year, you put Liufau out there out of Notre Dame. I liked him. Also, Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest. I think he's a nice CB4. So a nice draft for the Cowboys. But with that, do you want to give your record prediction?
Yeah. Let's just get right on into it. But yeah, Cowboys. It is. I'm just gonna just say this real quick. It just does kind of feel like it's coming on the downturn. Feels like they just didn't get much better. There wasn't much going on. They don't have a ton of money going forward. But yeah, I mean, my record prediction for the Cowboys is, and it is still very respectable. A 10-7 record. I have them finishing second. I feel like the Eagles are the superior team. I feel like they have the better roster. I feel like you said, maybe the most important thing that they had this year was self-awareness, where I don't feel like the Cowboys had much of that. And so for that, they're still going to be competitive. They still got Dak, CeeDee Lamb, who are going to play great in the regular season, a defense that can turn over the ball. But yeah, 10-7 is where I feel comfortable predicting them.
You said that perfectly. I exactly copied you. I have them finishing second with the 10-7 record. They have a 9.5 win total over under. So we're both on the over side. So we're not like low on the team because we do know how good they are in the regular season. We're not worried about the regular season with this team. They'll be in the playoffs, but we are worried about the getting over the hump in the postseason. That's what it is. And ultimately the Eagles did add more to their weaknesses, and we did like their offseason more, and we just like the trajectory that the Eagles are on just a little bit more than the Cowboys. So with that, let's go over to our, division award predictions. Let's give our division awards out. And do you want to talk about your offensive MVP for the NFC East?
Yeah, and it's going to be a guy who's should and will get paid at some point this season, and CeeDee Lamb. Just an absolute dog, a guy who does everything for this offense. He is the sole focus, he is the sole receiver, and he's just incredible. I mean, this guy is a legit top, three wide receiver in the NFL. He does everything at an elite level. He's going to produce at an elite level. He's going to score touchdowns. He's going to get yards at an elite level. So CeeDee Lamb is the pick for me. And there's no reason his production from last year will hinder it all, because I think if anything, they're just going to target him even more.
Yeah, I love it. Take CeeDee Lamb with your second overall pick in fantasy. You should be going as the number one receiver in fantasy. He's that guy. I went with a little bit of a more bold route, and I'm not saying that he's a better receiver than CeeDee Lamb. I'm not even saying that he'll be more productive than CeeDee Lamb, honestly, because at the end of the day, CeeDee Lamb has Brandon Cooks and you know Jalen Tolbert as his receivers competing with him, and AJ Brown as Devonta Smith and Saquon on his offense. So I just think that AJ Brown has a transcendent season this year, and obviously he's a superstar. But I think he could just be a complete dominant alpha and really take the Eagles to new heights. I think him and Jalen Hurts have a great connection. I think Kellen Moore will really kind of make AJ Brown a big focal point. AJ Brown will be, very happy morale wise here, and he's just gonna have a great boom season. So I'm taking him with the top 7 pick in fantasy football, and I did really want to just point out AJ Brown because I think he's a complete monster. He can do it all. He'll moss you. He can have those big boom games where he'll get 35, 40 fantasy points. And I really just love AJ Brown, love everything about him. Last year, he had 9 games with over 125 yards last year, 91.3 PFF receiving grade, just a complete monster. He'll moss you. He can do it all. So I love AJ Brown, wanted to highlight him. He's my guy, but give me your defensive MVP for the division.
And this is chalk. It's the best player. It's one of the best players in the NFL. There's like we've talked about. There's just no one that really comes close to him. He is on an elite level of superstar alien tier type of NFL player. This guy is freaky. His bend, his athleticism is unlike really anyone else. He reminds me of a young Von Miller. He's just that kind of dude. He is a game wrecker. He's just a force to be reckoned with. He's a freak of nature. Just can't say enough good things about Micah Parsons, but he is a one of one type of guy, and there's really no one who touches him in this division.
I don't think anyone's close. This was a very easy decision. I think Micah Parsons has the upside to be the best defensive player of all time when it's all said and done. He really is that guy. And this award is the most valuable defensive player in the division. And it's just so obvious. He's the most valuable defensive player in the NFL because no one can do what he does. He can line up as a middle linebacker, blitz from the inside. He can be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL already in year 3 of his career. He can just literally do it all. He can drop back in coverage. He can get those strip stacks and big moments. He's just an absolute game wrecker, a menace, a havoc wreaker, a fear monger. Micah Parsons is that guy. I did want to shout out Brian Burns. I almost was bold and put Brian Burns on here because I really project a huge season from him. I think he takes a big step up and he becomes a superstar edge rusher in this tier of, edge rushers and the Parsons and Garrett's and Watts and Crosby's. But You do have to give it to Micah Parsons because he is that guy. He's too valuable not to. Give me your rookie of the year for the NFC East.
Sorry, Dan. I know I stole this from you before you got yours out there, but I do have to go with the young stud rookie receiver in Malik Neighbors. It just feels like an Odell 2.0. It feels like a guy who's just going to really burst onto the scene. And I mean, I don't see any reason, obviously Daniel Jones being the only reason that he can't succeed. But I mean, they're going to hyper target him. He is the offense. I think he'll have 1,000 yards in his rookie season. I think he could be also a guy that can score multiple touchdowns. So just look for a big season from Malik Neighbors because he is that dominant alpha guy. He's got that mentality. He was so good at LSU, and I don't see any reason it's not going to translate to the NFL.
Yep, totally agree. He is Odell Beckham Jr., rookie year OBJ. He is that guy. So absolutely love him. I'm targeting him in fantasy. I think he's just going to be an electric player, the third best receiver in this division, and that's saying a lot behind CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown and with Terry McLaurin in this division. He's an absolute stud. He's one of the best receiver prospects we've seen. I went with Quinyon Mitchell. I think he's gonna have a very transcendent, revolutionary season out of Toledo, out of nowhere. He killed the Senior Bowl. He's just kind of killed it at every level that he's been at. And I think that Quinyon Mitchell is a borderline top 10 corner in the NFL. He's just a absolute dog. He's a physical corner. He can play on the outside. He'll probably start out in the slot. He'll make a lot of plays. He can tackle. He can do it all. It was just a fantastic pick by the Eagles. Wanted to highlight Quinyon because I think he's just a star in the NFL very soon. With that, do you want to give the moment you've all been waiting for? Do you want to give your division award winner for anyone skipping around?
For those of you who don't watch the entire video and just want to get to the good part, here it is. We do have the Eagles, and just a few reasons why. It's the elite level of coaching with Vic Fangio. It's bringing in Kellen Moore. It's your offensive superstars and Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, your two premier tackles and Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. It's the AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. It's just a superstar loaded team that's hungry, that has self-awareness, that can attack what they're weak at, and bringing in Quinyon, Mitchell, and a Cooper DeJean. So just a team that attacked a good team that attacked their weaknesses that's just going to be even better this year. So it is the Eagles. For those of you who watched and already have known, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching. But yeah, here's the moment you've all been waiting for.
Yep, you have to give it to the Eagles. We have the Cowboys just one game right behind them, but ultimately the Eagles got a lot better this offseason, which is hard to do with how stacked they were. They really attacked the weaknesses. They added some superstars into this team, injected that lineup with some stardom. The Cowboys didn't do a thing. They stayed totally put. All they did was piss off their best player. That's all the Cowboys did this offseason. So you have to give it to the Eagles. They're going to be a very fun team to watch. We both were on the same exact wavelength damn near with all these teams' records except for the Giants, but very fun episode. Very fun talking about the NFC East. It'll be a very interesting division to see how it all plays out when it's all said and done. A very fun discussion. Any extra hot takes before we get out of here?
Oh, Jake Ferguson finishes as tight end 3. I have
Ooh.
him finishing behind. I'm not going to go too crazy when I say over Travis Kelce and Sam Laporta, but I think he legitimately could finish as a top 3 tight end at the number 3 spot because the targets are going to be there. He's the second best offensive weapon. He was fantastic last year, and I think big things are coming for him. So there's your fantasy exit hot take.
Yeah, I like it. He's going to be the wide receiver too for the Cowboys. So there it is. Draft Jake Ferguson. He'll be printing money if he does finish as a top 3 tight end. It would be electric. But yeah, very fun episode. Thank you guys for tuning in to another deep dive episode. Only 2 more left, AFC and NFC West. Super excited to get into those. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out.